The New York Rangers decided to name JT Miller the 29th captain in New York Rangers franchise history. And personally, I think this was the perfect candidate for the Rangers to be the next captain. After Jacob Trouba obviously got traded away, it was evident that this team definitely needed to go in a different direction with their next leader. And personally, I think what JT Miller can potentially bring to this team, not only on the ice, but also off the ice, is pretty much exactly what this team has been missing over the past seasons. And that's why I thought the trade that happened there, picking up a guy like JT Miller from the Vancouver Canucks and what the Rangers had to give up, I thought in itself was a pretty great deal. I think the Rangers definitely made out pretty well in that trade. They got the exact kind of player they needed, and now that he's become the captain of this team, I think that trade looks even better because this really is someone who I think can really have a massive help in kind of shifting this culture of the New York Rangers. I think he is someone who is not going to be afraid to call someone out, even if it's Mika Zibanejad or maybe it's a Vincent Trocheck or a Panarin. I think JT is going to be a guy who is willing to call anyone out on any given night at any given moment. And that's why that kind of makes him a nearly perfect candidate to be the next captain. And obviously, there's never going to be a truly perfect captain, but he is pretty much as good as it's going to get for what this team needs. We needed someone who's going to come in here and really kind of lead by example with his play. JT Miller is going to come on the ice, and he is going to give pretty much 100% effort every single time he's out there. He's definitely not someone who's going to take shifts off in the defensive zone, and he's also going to be able to put up some points as well. So I just think with what he kind of brings there in his style of play, it's really something that especially I would like to see some of the Rangers kind of young prospects like an Othman or a Berard, to start to kind of get some of that kind of style of play into their game more. And they definitely have some of that, but learning from a guy like JT, who's obviously been around the league for quite some time now, and he's been that kind of hard-nosed two-way player for a good while now at the NHL level, I think that's definitely someone that could be a really great leader and kind of teacher for some of these young guys as well to learn from. So I just think all around, on and off the ice, he should be a really great captain and leader for this team. And, at moments in the past, it definitely does feel like there wasn't really that guy in the locker room, even Jacob Trouba, when he was the captain, that would kind of call people out when they weren't doing a good enough job, because there were definitely many, many moments when I saw a player like a Mika Zibanejad, for example, last season. He took many, many shifts off, and it's not just to single him out. There were other players as well, but Mika is definitely someone that I absolutely 100% noticed for sure take some shifts off throughout this past season and at moments in the past as well. And there were other players, but the point being, we needed someone to come into this locker room and not be afraid to call guys out. And back on Tuesday, I was listening to the Spittin Chiclets podcast, which is hosted by, of course, three former NHLers in Keith Yandle, Ryan Whitney, and Paul Bissonnette. Keith Yandle is also, of course, a former Rangers player, and on the show, they ended up having as a guest Sean Avery, who is also a former NHLer and former New York Rangers player. Keith Yandle played a total of 103 regular season games with the Rangers, getting 58 points as a defenseman, and in the playoffs with the Rangers, he had 24 games played with 12 points. And then for Sean Avery, in the regular season with the Rangers, he had 264 games played, 123 points, and then in the playoffs, he had 28 games played with 15 total points. So it's quite obvious that, those two and Paul Bissonnette and Ryan Whitney all know hockey quite well, being former, pro players, of course, playing at the top level, and, two of the four playing for the New York Rangers, this franchise. But Yandle is actually a player who did get to play with JT Miller back when he was with the Rangers originally, before getting dealt away when the Rangers decided to go into that big rebuild where they sent out the letter and he got dealt over in that big deal with Ryan McDonough over to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Keith Yandle has gotten to be in the locker room with JT before. He got to play with him on the Rangers in the past. I mean, it wasn't some, crazy long amount of time there, but Yandle spent his entire time with the Rangers with JT Miller there as well. So he's definitely got to know the guy, of course, and this is definitely someone who had some pretty high praise for JT Miller, and it did seem like all four of them, from what I kind of listened to, definitely seemed to think this was the best move for the Rangers, and all of them seemed to like this move quite a bit. And Keith Yandle basically went on to say that he thinks JT Miller is going to be a good captain because he is someone who's going to be willing to call guys out when they're taking shifts off, if they're not playing hard enough, if they're not giving enough effort, which is something that, JT Miller pretty much always does. He's always playing hard. He's always giving lots of effort, and he doesn't really take shifts off. So he is definitely a guy who I think should be more than willing to go out there and, call out a Zibanejad, call out a Trocheck or a Panarin, whoever it is. It's a Foxy. Doesn't matter. I think he'll be a guy who's probably willing to call guys out, and that's exactly what Yandle basically said. Ryan Whitney also talked about how he's just someone who can basically kind of lead by example there. I also kind of mentioned this at the start of the video, how, JT is that guy who he's going to play a hard-nosed style of game. He's going to be physical. He's always going to play with energy and effort. He's going to be battling hard in the offensive and defensive zone. He's not going to take shifts off, and he's just going to be always playing hard. And that's someone who can really just kind of lead by example there with his play on and off the ice. I mean, the Rangers obviously needed someone like this to be added to the team, but I think it's even better with the fact that he is now the captain and is the guy who is going to be leading the entire team, but is also going to be someone that, players like a Noah Laba or a Brennan Othmann or a Brett Berard, some of these younger guys and prospects, are probably looking up to and or maybe wanting to replicate some of his style of play into theirs. And guys like Laba and Othmann and Berard have some of that, but I think if they can get even more of that kind of style of play into their game, that could be pretty incredible. And another thing is, for example, if you're a guy like a Brennan Othmann or a Noah Laba that are really trying to crack this lineup, well, if you're seeing a guy like JT Miller, who is the captain, the leader of this team, one of the best players. He's got that massive contract, of course, but he's still given all the effort. He's still playing intensely. He's still playing physically. He's being a tough player. He's given effort and energy. Well, that means you definitely have to do that too. If you're one of those young guys who aren't even in the lineup and aren't getting a guaranteed spot, well, you're definitely going to have to work your butt off and really play hard and play physical and intense and with a lot of energy and effort. So that's also something that I really hope can kind of rub off on not only the young guys, but also guys like Zibanejad, who mainly when he was playing center earlier on this season before he made the switch to wing, I thought was really taking some shifts off, wasn't playing great, wasn't giving much effort and kind of playing with some energy and physically at all. So I think that's where you have a guy like JT Miller in now. He's not going to be afraid to call guys out when they're taking shifts off. So that is one big reason on kind of why I'm really happy to see a guy like JT Miller become the next captain. And it's no shot at Trocheck or Foxy, but I just don't quite know if they really have that in them. Maybe they do to call guys out, but I just think at the end of the day, it seems like JT Miller just wants to win hockey games, and that is exactly what I wanted in my captain for my favorite team. So if he's going to be able to do that and he's not going to be worried about hurting someone's feelings or something like that by calling him out, then I think at the end of the day, this is exactly what this team needed, because there were way too many moments when guys were taking shifts off. They weren't playing hard enough. They weren't giving enough effort. And now with this whole kind of retool that's happened there with a bunch of moving pieces, you shifted around the core a whole lot there. You get in a new coach. You get in a new captain. A lot of things have changed. Now it's hopefully time to see this team get back on track to winning hockey, and hopefully we'll be able to make the playoffs and possibly go on a bit of a run with their new captain in JT Miller. Anyways, that's pretty much going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post a video about the New York Rangers every single day at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on JT Miller becoming the next captain. What are your thoughts on what some of these guys said in the podcast here? And also, if you want to listen to their podcast and hear what they had to say, I'll have that Spittin Chiclets episode linked in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.